Hi everybody, this is Grayson with PERRLA. I'm here and today we're going to be talking about writing advanced papers using PERRLA. How you can do it, what you need to know to sort of navigate those papers that are pretty complex, especially those papers that come up towards the end of a semester or towards the end of a program, and how you can use PERRLA to really create your best paper and still get all that functionality with PERRLA, even though we're going to be creating a paper that deviates from the standard APA and MLA formats. All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to cover a couple different things. First, we're going to talk about what are specialized papers. What do they look like and what goes into them? Second, we're going to be talking about working with unique paper sections and adding non-APA content. So how do you do this and how does it work when you're using PERRLA? Finally, if you have questions, we're going to talk about where you can send those. Our support team is amazing. And this is the first thing I really want to knock out of the park here is emphasizing how good they are. If you have questions or concerns about how to use PERRLA, about how to format your paper, about the APA or MLA format, we're here and we want to help. And we really want to make sure that you're succeeding while you're writing. You can reach out to us via email at support@perrla.com. We also have an awesome help center where you can go anytime and you can see a number of articles and videos and tutorials on how to use PERRLA and some best practices while you're writing. But if you run into questions or problems while you're working on that dissertation or that capstone or just that final paper for the end of the semester, we're here and we want to be able to make sure that you're creating the paper that you're going to get an A on, at least for all the formatting, and that you're having a successful time using PERRLA in general. So don't hesitate. We're here every day from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. Central Time. Okay, with that out of the way, let's actually dive right in. So what are specialized papers? We've all written those research papers where you have a title section, you've got a body, and then you have reference sections. Now, those come in all sorts of different varieties and length and structure, depending on what you're writing about. But sometimes we have to do a specialized paper that requires special content. So the APA and MLA guidelines give us a number of directions for how those standard sections should look, including things like headings 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and ways that we can break up our paper into other subsections, also including things like abstracts and appendices. However, that doesn't always cover the full range of things that can show up inside of a paper. You may need a table of contents. You may need a table of tables or a table of figures. And we've got some great instructions in the Help Center on how to do those two things. But you may need multiple sections within your appendices. One of your appendices may actually need to be landscape mode because it's a table that's too wide. That's a hint. We're going to see that later on. You may need to include multiple sections in the middle of your paper, or you may need to include an acknowledgments or an honor code statement page at the beginning. All of those things are non-APA and non-MLA compliant, which just means that they don't show up in the book. However, your professor is going to have some very specific instructions on what that paper section does actually look like. And using Microsoft Word, you're going to be able to actually take and customize your document and include all those sections while you're using PERRLA at the exact same time. So let's actually take a look at what one of those papers looks like. So here I am actually inside of Microsoft Word, and I've got a title page here. You can see it looks a little bit different from our standard APA paper. I've got an acknowledgments page to mom and dad because they're always there for you. An abstract, we've got our tables of content. We have some of our text with headings in it. Scrolling through here, our reference section. And then finally, we have here an appendix section that's horizontal because it's a wide table. And then we've got a final appendix with some further description of Sasquatch biology. Now, this isn't a long paper necessarily, and usually when we think about specialized papers, we may think of long papers, but really they can be compact or short papers that just have unusual elements in it. So this paper is only about 8 pages long, only 8 pages, but it does include a number of features that are non-APA standard that we're going to have to do a little bit of customization inside of our paper to get it looking correct and set up correct. So let's look actually at recreating this paper. And in the process of doing that, I'm going to give you a number of tips that will be really helpful as you're using PERRLA and as you're integrating PERRLA with Microsoft Word and these special papers. So let's go back over here and look at tip number 1, because this is a really important tip, is that your professor is always right, even when they're wrong. I know that may be incredibly frustrating for a number of people, myself included, But if your professor has the grading pen in their hand and they say they want your entire document to be in Comic Sans, well, guess what? You're going to be submitting a paper in Comic Sans. If your professor says that actually they want to have 3 sections on this and then they want to have an extra page after the title page, well, because they're the one grading your paper, they are your audience. You're going to have to do what it is they want you to do. So although PERRLA does amazingly well, perfectly well, with APA and MLA, if your professor decides to go rogue, it's always best to listen to them. All right, let's also talk here, because I mentioned it for a second, about tip number 2, because getting started is really important. And when you're writing one of these types of papers, I really recommend that you use our Microsoft Word add-in. Microsoft Word gives you all of the flexibility and structure and potential to change anything about a paper that you want. I love PERRLA Online. I think it's an amazing tool and it can help you write some really awesome, perfectly formatted papers. But when it comes to doing something that's weird, like inserting a landscape page in the middle of your paper, PERRLA Online just doesn't do it. It makes sure that it keeps you within strict APA and MLA guidelines so that you are always following that. If you have to deviate from the APA and the MLA format, you really are going to be best to do that inside of Microsoft Word. Now, if you're writing your paper with PERRLA Online and you don't want to use the add-in, that's all right. Write your paper inside of PERRLA Online. Then make sure that you take it out into some type of word processing software. That could be Microsoft Word, it could be Google Docs, it could be Apple Pages, it could be OpenOffice, which is the freeware version of Microsoft Word. And then make those specializations in that context. Just because you can't do them inside of PERRLA Online. We keep you kind of in the straight and narrow. So if you have a paper that you got to do something really strange, hop into Microsoft Word and use the PERRLA add-in. It really is going to give you that fine grain level of control that you're going to need to create some of these things. Okay, I said we were going to create a paper, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's create a paper, and with this, we're going to create all of the sections before we start writing. So let's come in here into Microsoft Word, and I'm just going to open up PERRLA, and I'm going to create a new document, just like normal. We don't have to do anything really special at this stage. We're just going to go ahead and create our paper. So in the create page, we can see there's a couple of elements that actually correspond from our custom title page to things that PERRLA gives us. Let's just fill those out. So we're going to do Sasquatch, the truth revealed. All right, we have our author, Serena Sparkles. The institution is PERRLA University, presented to the Committee of Cryptozoological Affairs on April 1st, 2023. We are really ahead of the game here. 01/2023. There we go. And now let's take and create our research paper. Just like always, PERRLA is going to create a new document for us, and it's going to set up all the stylings and headings and formatting and all those things that really are a pain in the tuchus. It's going to take care of them out of the gate. Now, as you can tell, this is a standard Word document. It's following the APA structure, giving us 3 blank lines, then the title of our paper, a blank line, and then the rest of the content. That's not quite how this paper looks. We're going to make that change. We also know that we have a couple different sections in here. So, following tip number 3, which we saw for just a second, the first thing we want to do when creating these types of complex papers is try to create all of the sections before you start putting in the content. If you know that you're going to have a table of contents and an abstract and an acknowledgments page and an appendix, make sure that you do that from the beginning. Because what happens is when you start writing all of that content inside of your paper, and then you go and you say, oh no, I've got to add a section break, a section and a whole new page after the table of contents before the body of the paper that includes this. Doing that when you have actual content inside of your paper makes things a lot more complicated. There's just more places where things can go wrong. It's not impossible. You can use the exact same technique that we're about to look at here whenever you want in writing your paper, but I always suggest you do your sections first. It's really going to help the document just have a clean slate to sort of be working from. It's like building a body or a skeleton. You know, when you're writing paper, you start with an outline and then you write it out because you want to have the bones of your paper in place first. We want to think about the actual document of the paper the same way. We want those sort of structural pieces to be in place before we start throwing in all the content, all the sort of guts and flesh onto our paper. So that way we have something solid and steady that can handle all that. And we're not going to get ourselves into a formatting nightmare later on. So let's take and add some of these sections into our paper. All right, so we have our title page. Fantastic. Let's just look through. We have acknowledgments, abstract, table of contents, the body, a reference section, one appendix, and two appendices. Okay, so let's actually do the ones that are going to be easy first, and those are the ones that PERRLA actually gives you built-in options for. So we have things like abstract, table of contents, and appendices right here, and we can do those first, and that's what I absolutely recommend. So let's go ahead and open up abstract, and we'll click add an abstract. Boom, done. We've got our abstract. Okay, now let's go over to table of contents. Even though we don't have any headings on our paper yet, we're going to take and click add table of contents. Fantastic, there's that. Now let's add two appendices. Now, if you're adding an appendix, if you don't have any references in your paper yet, PERRLA will automatically generate a reference section for you, because we need to have the reference section in place to be able to put the appendices after the reference section. You can come in here, so you can just come in and you can just add an appendix, and it's going to automatically generate a reference section for you, but it won't have any references in it yet. However, you could also take and just add a reference that will create a reference section for you. So when you add your first reference to your paper, or you create your first reference in a paper, it's going to generate that reference section. And then you could add the appendices after. But let's just go ahead and we're going to click add an appendix, so that PERRLA will create our reference page for us already after the body, and it's going to create our first appendix. And we saw that we had two appendices, so I'm going to hit and add a second appendix. And as you can see, that's going to update the name of our appendices from appendix to appendix A and appendix B. Okay, that takes care of the PERRLA sections. I now have my title page, my abstract, table of contents, so don't have anything there yet. We've got a body with nothing there yet. We've got our references, nothing there. And then we have two appendix sections. Great. So I believe that we were missing, however, an acknowledgments page. We need to add an acknowledgments page between the title page and the abstract. All right, so let's take, and this is going to bring us to actually our fourth tip, which is, well, actually, it was our fourth tip. We saw it already. Create a reference section by adding a reference to your paper. Or if you're adding an appendix, just click add an appendix. We'll add the reference section for you automatically. But we create the reference section when you add a reference or create an appendix. Okay, tip 5. Tip number 5. Turn on the hidden character feature inside of Microsoft Word when you are adding or editing unique sections. The hidden character feature is probably one of the most powerful single features inside of Microsoft Word, hands down. All right, pay close attention. We are going to go to the Home ribbon tab, and then here towards the middle, there's something that looks like a backwards P, okay? Like PERRLA is amazing. This P, backwards P, other PERRLA, other P, it's even better. Well, it's not better. It's just really helpful. It makes PERRLA, they go hand in hand. They're just like the best. So I'm going to take it, I'm just going to click it. It's an icon. Now, what this does is it shows all of the hidden characters, all those invisible characters, things like spaces, tabs, enter, where you hit enter or return on your keyboard. It's called paragraph mark. It's section breaks, page breaks. It's going to show you all those things that are normally just invisible, but those are the things that are so important when creating the layout for your paper. Rarely is it the actual visible content that's generating the structure of your paper. It's all these invisible things that are actually driving what your paper looks like and how each of these sections interact with one another. So for instance, now that we have hidden characters turned on, we can see on the title page, I don't have to go and click through and count the lines. I can see, yeah, there are 3 lines here at the beginning of my title. There's an empty line there. And then at the end of this section, the title page, I didn't just press enter a number of times until I got onto page number 2. Because if you've ever done that, you know how frustrating that can be. You know, you type in there, and then you make one change up, and then all of a sudden all of your pages jump down a hole, and you've got to go back and readjust. These section and page breaks make that way easier. PERRLA does it for you. It's really nice. It also helps you format these sections individually, which we'll see in a second. But I can see now that section break. Without hidden characters turned on, That's invisible. I don't know what kind of break is there. I just know that there's something here where I can't click below it anymore. So turning on those hidden characters lets me see, this is a section break that goes to the next page. Here on abstract, I can see I've got my abstract here, paragraph marks where I go to a new paragraph, and then another section break. All right, here I am in my table of contents right here. That looks great. And here at the end, that double line mark, that's another section break. Here I have the body, I have an extra line, and I've got a section break. References. This is where my references are going to show up. And I have, you guessed it, a section break. And then here in my appendices, I have Appendix 1, and Appendix A and Appendix B, and they're part of a single section, even though they are separate pages. And so I have just a normal page break between these. That's awesome. So by showing these hidden characters, we can see exactly what's going on. That means that when it comes to us adding a special page, getting back to where we were, like the acknowledgments page, we need to add a page between the title and the abstract. We can do that and know exactly what type of content we are adding into our paper. So to add a page here right before the abstract, I'm going to place my cursor right here in front of where it says abstract, the very first thing on this page. Now I'm going to go into the Insert tab here, and I can insert a page break if I wanted, but I really want to insert a section break. And so if we go into Insert on Windows computers, this is a little drop down here by the break section. I'm on a Mac, and so I do it up at the top for Insert, Break. I'm going to choose Section Break, Next Page. That means it's going to be adding a next page break. It will take this abstract content and push it a page down, and then it's going to create a section break here. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So we can see now abstract is on page 3. It was on page 2. And now I have a section break right here where I can come and I can add in 2 lines. I need to add those paragraph breaks so I have a place where I can actually start typing. And here I can go acknowledgments, press enter. Then I'm going to make sure that this is formatted for paragraph, just like that, so that it's indented correctly. Remember, we made this from abstract, so it was a little bit different. Abstract doesn't indent that first line, so we're setting this correctly. So now I have my acknowledgement section in here. Now let's talk a little bit about why I used a section break and not a page break, and not pressing enter a bunch of times. Well, talking about pressing enter a bunch of times, we talked about this a second ago. When you are doing that to start off with, it's going to work. It'll work. You know, you'll have a blank page, and it's going to have a bunch of inner lines on it. I think it has like 13 or 14 on a line on a page. And then you're going to take and you're going to start typing. And as you start typing, all those enter breaks get shifted down and shifted down and shifted down. So if you make an adjustment, so you end up writing an 8-page paper, and you go back and you say, oh, I've got to edit page 1 of this. I need to edit my abstract or my acknowledgments. And suddenly the edits that I make add 2 extra lines. Well, that means that your entire paper gets pushed down 2 extra lines. So where the title was at the beginning of a page, you now have 2 empty lines and then the title. And where a table was fitting perfectly at the bottom of a page, it's now bumped halfway between one page and half on the next. So you end up creating a lot more work for yourself by entering in a bunch of empty lines to create new pages or to go to a new page, versus if you have just the amount of content that you need. So I just need 1 line where I can type my paper. In this case, I need 1 line where I can type my acknowledgments, and then insert a page break or a section break so that it breaks at the end of the content. So if I add 2 lines, if it goes over to another page, it'll create that other page for me. But the content that comes after that section break, it's going to continue to stay at the top. So let's look at this, because that's kind of ambiguous. So right now I have abstract at the top of a page. I have my acknowledgments and then a section break. So if I take and I just press enter, I'm just going to press enter a bunch of times, and let's pretend that this could be content that I've written. I'm writing over a page of acknowledgments, and suddenly my acknowledgments goes on to a second page. Well, the abstract page, let's say it goes 2.5 pages. The abstract, it's still at the top of the next page on the first available line on the next page, because this section break says, hey, no matter where I'm at, the content that comes next, make sure that it's on a new page, on the next page, and it's going to start off at the very top. if I had done this with inner marks, so if I had the title on this line and suddenly I'm typing up here, as I type, you see suddenly I've got to go back and go, oh, I've got to adjust this and take that back. And now suddenly this one's not formatted correctly any longer. And I went one too far. It just is a nightmare. It's a headache, a real headache. So we're going just going to highlight all that. We're going to undo it so that we're using our section and our page breaks. Okay, that's why you don't want to use enter. The other thing to know about section breaks, and this is really important for Word documents, is that every time there's a section break, it is a new section of the paper. I know that sounds really straightforward and obvious, but sections inside of Word documents allow you to format each section independently. So for instance, in this document here, on page 1, 2, 3, and 4, the page number actually uses lowercase Roman numerals. And then on page 5, it turns to Arabic numerals. And we can do that, and Word can do that, because there's a section break between page 4 and page 5. These are different sections of the document that have different formatting rules for the page number, which we'll actually look at in just a second. That same thing applies when we talk about this appendix section down here that's landscape. It's in a section of its own. And so we're able to say, hey, for this section, orient the page on its side in landscape mode. That way it's different from the page, the section that comes before it, and the section that comes after. And as we can see here, if I turn on these hidden characters, you can see we're going to go in and add a section break here at the end of this appendix to separate it from this appendix, because we want these to be different sections so we can format them differently. All right. So that's why we want to use section breaks between each of these things. Good policy all around, helps Word use the functionality that's built into it to your advantage, so you're not wasting time later on trying to format, reformat, and get rid of and change and everything. I've been there. I've done it. I wasted many hours doing it, and this is the much better way. Okay, so now we have all this in place. We've got the structure of our paper ready to go. Let's take and start customizing these sections so that they look like the document we want. So let's start off by looking at the title page. Here in the title page, we're going to turn on our hidden characters so we can see what's going on. We don't have to guess. Three lines, and then our title. An empty line, and then a capstone by Serena Sparkles. And these things that have the boxes around them, those are our content controls, right, from PERRLA. That's content that PERRLA is controlling. We can see these content controls on the title page correlate to the title page fields that we've filled out inside of PERRLA. So if I were to update this, it would update that. But we need to have an empty line, a capstone by Serena Sparkles. So let's do this. So we've got this, and just because these content controls, we can't edit inside of them, right? But we can move them around inside of the title page. So a capstone by Serena Sparkles. Okay, we've got an empty line for PERRLA University. All right, so I'm going to go Serena, press my right arrow key to get outside of that content control. An empty line for PERRLA University. There we are. And then we're going to have two empty lines presented to the Committee of Cryptozoological Affairs on April 1st, 2023. So I need to place my cursor here by the content control. I see it, so I need to press the right arrow key, moving my cursor outside the content control, right? Now I'm going to press enter. I had two empty lines. So I need two empty lines. Now I can paste that content there and get rid of that empty line there. Presented to the Committee of Cryptozoological Affairs. All right, so now we have this and that, and it looks great. Look at there. All right, for acknowledgments, let's go ahead and put in all of our acknowledgments content here. Perfect. That looks great. And then our abstract. So I'm going to copy this here. Copy. And then an abstract, I'm going to paste it there. So I just Command C or Control C and Control V, or Command C, Command V. You can also take, and you can always paste and keep the formatting. So I'm going to go Edit, and then paste and match formatting. That's going to take and make sure that it matches the formatting, whatever I copied, it's going to paste it and match the formatting of the text that I'm replacing or whatever I'm putting in. So in this case, we have the abstract font, paragraph type here where it's not indented. So I can make sure that I edit, paste, and match formatting. This is also available here on the home screen under paste, match formatting. There you go. Just gonna make sure that it formats this in the way that we want it to be formatted. So other options. Keywords. We've got 2 keywords here. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, cryptozoology. Let's highlight those and paste those in right there. Great. All right, so we've got these 3 together. Next up, table of contents. We don't have those headings in our document yet, so we don't need to make any changes here. Because if we remember, this is one of the things that's really nice. PERRLA headings, so these headings 1 through 5 that PERRLA generates, that's how we build your table of contents. So when you're building the sections for your paper, you're adding in section 1, an analysis of Bigfoot sightings. You need to make sure that you format that using the heading 1 here. Don't just center it and bold it, because then we don't know that it's a heading 1. By using these heading drop-downs and applying those styles specifically, we're able to capture those headings inside of the table of contents and build it for you automatically. We'll look at that in just a second. Before we get there, we've got one other thing we've got to fix in this section. That's what we mentioned earlier, is these page numbers. These page numbers are still in Arabic numerals, and we need them to be in lowercase Roman numerals. So I'm going to take and I'm going to double click into the header here. All right. Once we're inside of the header, inside of Word, we'll see header section here, and we actually get the header and footer ribbon tab. Over here, I'm going to come to page number, format, page number. Now, because my cursor is in this first section here, we know that we're going to be editing and changing the format of the page number in this first section. See, it says header section 1. It's the first section in our paper. Page number, format page numbers, number format, lowercase Roman numerals. Okay, it changes it from 1 to I. All right, now let's scroll down, and this is going to be 2. Now this is a new section, so it has different formatting. So we need to take page number, format page number, I, and continue from previous section. That page numbering, we don't want this to start over with another I, another 1. We want to start with 2. So to continue with previous. Okay, great. Now that is II, 2. All right, let's go to 3. This is a new section. See, we've got that section break here. So page number, format, I. Great. And then the last one, 4, a new section here, because there's a section break at the end of the previous page. Page number, format page numbers, lowercase Roman numeral, IV. And we can see that this doesn't actually change where it starts on page 5 in the body because of the section break at the end of the table of contents. See how that's helping us format each of these sections independently of each other. Great. That takes care of our page numbers. Now I can close the header and footer and go back into the regular body of the paper. Okay, so now we actually have section 1, section 2, acknowledgments done, our abstract done, table of contents, we've got to build that based off the content that we put, the headings we put into our body. So let's actually dive in and do that. Let's take, now this is where you would start typing, right? You could start typing the body of your paper and working in it, putting in your ideas, creating your citations, generating your references, throwing in headings. We're going to take just a shortcut here, and we're going to copy and paste out of this document that I spent a long time writing earlier. So I'm just going to copy this, all right? And I'm going to come over in here, and I'm going to highlight this first sentence, and we're going to get rid of that. Okay, I like to keep that extra line there. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to paste keep text only. You can do that or match formatting. Both of them are going to do the same thing. Let's go keep text only. So it's going to paste just the text, just like that. All right. Now I can see I've got all this wonderful text in here. However, what do we notice? These headings, because we pasted text only, which is a great practice when you're pasting, like copying and pasting from the internet or from another Word document or from another type of document, it's going to include that text, but it's just the text. So I need to take and set my heading style here. So I'm going to come into PERRLA. I'm going to highlight that content. I say text and heading styles, heading 1. PERRLA is going to automatically format that as a heading 1 for me. Now that we have a heading in here, I can actually come back up to the table of contents, and it gives me some instructions on how to build my table of contents, right? So right click and click Update Field to generate your table of contents. Okay, so I'm going to right click and then click Update Field to generate my table of contents. And there we go. Here's our table of contents, and we can see because we have one heading in our paper, we have one heading right here. That's actually it's the title, the beginning of the paper, and then citings. That's the heading we just created. So the title at the beginning of the body, that counts as a heading. The title at the beginning of the reference section works as a heading. The title for the first and second for each appendix, those count as headings, so those get included as well. So now we have citings in here. So let's go down and let's look at history. Highlight it, select heading 1. That's going to set it as a heading. Let's go down here, hoaxes. Let's actually make this a heading 2. We're going to deviate just a little bit. You can see here, PERRLA is going to format this as a heading 2, left aligned and bolded. Let's see, origins will also make this a heading 2. As a side note, you never have just one heading level of something. So if I have a heading 2, I should always have 2 heading 2s. If I don't have 2 of them, then I really only have one thing, and it doesn't need a heading to separate it from anything else because there's nothing else to separate it from. So if you have subheadings, there should always be multiple subheadings. So just a side tip. But remember, if your professor doesn't want you to do that, don't do it. And then last thing, conclusion. So this is a major section, so we're going to go back to heading 1. All right, we've added these new headings, so let's actually go back up into our table of contents and say, well, those headings aren't there then. Yeah, we've got to tell Word that we want to update our table of contents to include the new headings and changes we've made. So we're going to take and follow that same process. We're going to right-click, and we're going to choose Update Field. We're going to update the entire table. So if we had not added any new sections, any new heading levels, we had just moved things, added some extra content and the page numbers have changed, we may update the pages only, but it's always best just to update an entire table. So, okay, I'm going to update my entire table, and see, now it's going to pull in those other heading levels that we have. And it has this hoaxes and origins, which we set as heading level 2s as subheadings of history. Awesome. Table of contents is looking great. Now we need to take, and let's keep working through our paper here. References. All right, references, we're going to take and we're going to blaze through this one a little bit. So I've got my paper here on the left, the original, and I've got my new one here. These are all references that I've already generated. So this is one of the great things about the PERRLA reference library is as you're working through your semester, as you're writing little papers or discussion responses for class, you're generating references. And then when it comes time to write your final paper, you don't have to go out and re-find all that bibliographic information. You don't have to go and try to find this. You have a whole set of references sitting there ready to be used, formatted and perfectly suitable for the final paper that you're going to be writing. So I've built all these in my reference library already. So let's take, I'm going to add a reference from my library right here. All right, so I can actually search for these. Bomb, all right, Bigfoot meets microlinguistics, add that to my paper. In fact, most of these all have Bigfoot in the title. So I'm going to take and search just for Bigfoot. So Bigfoot, real or not? Yep, there we go, right there. Billsley 2016. Aha, right here. I'm going to add that to my paper. Childress. Perfect. I have that one actually in there twice. Josephites or Josephites. Take that one. How about the persons organized for Bigfoot protection? Like them. Rodfern. Here we go. Smithy. And Sykes. Then we have Travel Channel. And Jens. Right there, Bigfoot in the Sierra Nevadas. Awesome, cool. All right, well, those are adding to my paper. You can see my reference section is being built perfectly. And not just because I click them in order. I could take and I can come back here and I can add this Radcliffe reference. And you can see it's going to add Radcliffe in the right spot. It's PERRLA does that for you. Now, there's one cool thing. I want to make a little side note here. This very first reference here for Alan, it doesn't seem to have Bigfoot anywhere in the text. Alan BG 2009 Retaining Talent, a guide to analyzing and managing employee turnover. That sounds boring, but it has nothing to do with Bigfoot. And the reason is, if I remember this correctly, is because it actually has the Bigfoot tag applied to that reference. So let's actually I'm going to add this reference to my paper. Okay, so it's going to pop it up right here at the beginning. We're going to go out of our reference library, and let's go and let's edit this reference. So I can see Barry Allen, Retaining Talent. Right here, there's Bigfoot nowhere in that, but down here at the bottom, we've given it a tag of Bigfoot. So that means that anytime I'm searching for Bigfoot inside my reference library, this is going to populate. Now, I can just type in Bigfoot, right? And it's going to show up along with all the other references that have Bigfoot in the title. But if I wanted to search for just references that have the Bigfoot tag, I could put in hashtag or # for those of us who grew up pre-Twitter, Bigfoot. I could also put up hashtag biology, and it's going to find all my references that I have tagged for biology, or hashtag cryptozoology. And you'll find all the ones I've tagged for cryptozoology. So that's a really great way when you're creating your references to build in a little bit of background organization. So you could do, hashtag and then the class. History 101, biology 304, biology 101 lab, social studies, English, Great British literature. I don't know, whatever you want it to be. Adding in those tags, and it gives you the ability to search through your reference library later on using those tags themselves. So, all right, we're going to remove Alan out of there so that we were one-to-one here with our paper. Perfect. All right, so now we have all these references here available inside of our document. Now, we'll need to take, and for instance, we got to recreate those citations. When I copied and pasted those over as just text, our citations followed as text, but they're not connected to any of these references here. So tell you what, we're going to just do this once or twice. We're not going to go through all of them and do it, but I need a reference. Oh, I actually need a citation here that combines the Josephites reference and the Sykes reference. We're just going to do this backwards so you can see that PERRLA is going to handle it. So I'm going to place my cursor where I want the citation to appear. Always step number 1. Step 2, go to the reference in the References and Citations panel and click Add Citation underneath that reference. Now, for this one, we don't have a direct quote, so we're going to just leave that blank, and we're going to click Create. It's going to create our citation right here, Sykes et al. You can see that's inside of our content control, which is great. Now I'm going to place my cursor inside of the citation, right? Just smack dab right in the middle of it. And we need to create a dual citation here that also points to Josephites, because we're citing both of these works in our sentence. So I've placed my cursor where I want the citation to appear, which is inside this citation. Now I'm going to click Add Citation under that, and I'll click Create Citation. Now PERRLA is going to take and create a joint citation with both of those authors, or both of those works, inside of one set of parentheses, and it's going to order the references inside that citation in the correct order. So no matter how many we add in there, or what order we throw them in, PERRLA keeps it sorted perfectly. All right, so we can do that. Now I can take, and we actually come here, and I can highlight that first one. I can get rid of that. I'll put that period back. There we go. That's our citation. How about this? Oh, POBP. Now this is an interesting one. We'll look at it as well. Let's say this is the persons organized for Bigfoot protection. This is an organization. It has an organizational author. However, if we look at this reference, here's my group author, persons organized for Bigfoot protection, with an abbreviation POBP, right? Let's take and let's create our citation. We'll do it on this side. Now actually, go ahead and place space, create our citation. Now, because this is a group author or an organizational author that has an acronym, the first time that we use that citation, first time we cite that author, it needs to have the entire title of the group author and the abbreviation in brackets. So this is the first time that we've created this citation in this paper. And so it's giving us the entire thing, right? So let's take and let's just get rid of our citation here. Now there should be another citation before this in this paper. Let's just go back and look here real quick. Let's find persons. There's that one. There. Here we are, right up here. So at the end of the citings section, persons organized for Bigfoot protection. Now, this is another citation we need to create. So let's go ahead, we'll place our cursor where we want it to appear, right? And we're going to add another citation right here, create that citation for us. Now, PERRLA is going to create this citation. The thing to know about this is that this citation actually appears in the paper before the citation that we made just a second ago. So now this is the first citation in the paper, if you're reading it from front to back, where we encounter this reference. So we need to have the full reference, including that. However, that second, I'll get rid of that, that second reference, or second citation, reference to that reference, now down here in our paper, look at there. It doesn't need the full group author name. It needs just the acronym. And so PERRLA has taken and updated the citation to just POBP. And I don't have to worry about where it is or what order it's in or updating somewhere else. PERRLA just handles all that stuff for me, which is awesome. Yeah, just one of the cool little side things I wanted to show here while we were digging through. All right, let's keep on trucking along. We have got one more big custom section thing to do, and that is creating a horizontal landscape view page in the middle of our appendix section. All right, so if I took here and I said, all right, let's just take and go to layout, which is where we get this, and I want this to be landscape mode. Great, there we go, it's landscape mode. How fantastic was that? However, Appendix B, I don't want that to be landscape mode. I want this to be portrait mode. Okay, but wait, it changed Appendix A as well, because Appendix A and Appendix B are in the same section of the document. See, we don't have a section break between these. We have a page break between these. So what are we going to do? We're going to get rid of that page break and replace it with a section break. So I'm going to take and I'm going to get rid of my page break. Dangerous. Now I have Appendix A and Appendix B on the same page, right? But we're going to do just like we did before with the abstract, adding in the acknowledgement section. I'm going to take Insert, Break, Section Break, Next Page. And that's going to push Appendix B back down to its own page, page 12, right where it belongs. And it's going to leave Appendix A on page 11. Now we have a section break on either side of Appendix A. So here's our content. We see we have a section break at the bottom, separating it from Appendix B, and we have a section break above it at the end of the reference section, keeping it there. So now it's isolated. It's its own thing, and we can come in here to orientation, change that to landscape, and we can see Appendix A is going to go into landscape view, while Appendix B stays in portrait view along with the end of the references above it. Isn't that cool? Section breaks, they're really powerful. And none of that would be possible without the hidden characters feature turned off. Okay, there's one last little tweak we're going to make here, and that's with this 11. It doesn't look right. It's because it's not right. So I'm going to double click into the heading here, right? And here I'm going to be using the ruler. This is a really, really great way to handle this. And you can see if I look on this ruler, I've got a tiny little left arrow. It kind of looks like an arrow pointing up and to the left. That is the tab mark. That's right aligned. It's a right tab, meaning that if I were typing on this line, I could type. When I hit my tab the first time, instead of just going a ½ inch, it's going to jump all the way over to the tab mark. And because it's a right tab, the arrow points to the left, that content is going to be shoved to the right. It's a right tab, content's on the right side. I can take and I can click this and drag it along my ruler to where it's supposed to be. And that is supposed to be all the way over here at the edge against the margin, right? If you can't see your ruler, come in here to the View ribbon tab inside of Word, and that first option there is Ruler. Boom. that's going to show and hide the ruler on the top and left-hand side. That ruler is also really, really helpful. Great. I got that page number done. So Appendix A, I could take and I could just copy and paste over this content. So have to recreate this table. Let's take and let's just paste it in here. And this is Sasquatch sightings by state in 2021. Okay. And then for Appendix B, a further description of their biology. I'm just going to copy that whole thing there, and we're going to paste that right over that. There we go. All right, here's our last cool thing before we get into the last major tip here for advanced papers. I'm going to turn off hidden character view here, and I'm going to look at our table. Okay. In the table right now, I see that there is a horizontal line going all the way across. And then it looks like there are vertical lines here inside of our table. Those lines by the APA tables only have horizontal lines. They don't really have vertical lines. Those lines that we see here, if we zoom in really close, they're dotted lines. That means that they're not actually there inside the paper. So if I place my cursor here inside of one of these, and I come over to the Layout tab, okay? I have my cursor inside. I'm going to be able to see a new ribbon tab here for Layout. One of the first options here is View Grid Lines. If I turn this off, you can see those dotted lines, they go away. I can't see them. Now, that's really nice because this is what it'll actually look like when it's printed. However, if I had all this content, if I had a table, say I've got a table and it has 5 rows in it. Suddenly, how do I know which cell I'm in? Especially if these cells are merged together and they're different, and they're weird. Trying to figure out, well, am I in here or here? Is this really lined up with this one? It just is a nightmare. But if I have View Grid Lines turned on, it suddenly will show me those invisible, non-printed lines that will show me where in the table I actually am. So anytime you're working with a table, especially a big table, make sure you have those View Grid Lines turned on. It's like turning on those hidden characters, but for tables, so that you know exactly what cell you're in. You don't have to jump around and figure it out. Save you a lot of heartache. Cool. All right, get rid of that. And that's it. We've got a beautiful looking paper here. We have all of our sections. We've got a wonderful reference section here, created and generated and kept up to date with PERRLA. We've got our table of contents. Let's update that one more time. Just make sure that we are fully up to date. Yep, there we go. We've got our abstract. We have our acknowledgments, and we have our title page. So I'm ready to turn this thing in, and that's great. For many professors, this is all you've got to do. They love, a lot of professors really love PERRLA. They love their students are using PERRLA because it means that they're having to pull out their red pen less because they know things are taken care of. However, some professors had to do things the hard way when they were younger and in school, and they want you to have to do it the hard way. It's an understandable human reaction, but there's a way around this. Or perhaps your professor wants to leave you comments and feedback, and they don't like having to comment around these content controls. Also, totally reasonable. PERRLA actually builds in something that allows you to create a clean copy of your paper that doesn't have any of these content controls around items or around citations. It's just the body of your paper. I'm trying to get down here to a citation. Exactly as you wrote it, with all the formatting, just without those content controls that allow PERRLA to interact with different elements. And that's actually our last tip. When it's time to create a paper, create a clean copy of your paper, and then submit the clean copy to your professor, the one that doesn't have all those content controls. It just is going to make things cleaner. And then you have a version that you can save that is yours, that you know is the final version, and is the one that they're going to give you feedback on. So how do we do that in PERRLA? Well, we're going to go up here to the paper review panel. Now, this is a great panel to look at anytime you're going to turn in a paper because it just helps you make sure that you're checking your paper for just some common mistakes that we've seen students make through the years. So first, review your references for missing information or typos. Got it. Make sure all references have a citation. See, in this paper, we only made a couple citations for those references. We didn't recreate all of them. And so we actually do have references that don't have citations. And I can see some of those here. So like this Josephites reference has a citation tucked up inside of it. Same thing with the persons organized for Bigfoot. Got 2 citations there. But these here that don't have the arrow beside them, they don't have any citations in the paper. And according to the APA, if you have a reference without citations, you don't really include the reference in the paper. So we would need to make sure that we remove those references that don't have citations. So that way we're not including citation references without citations in the paper, which is against the APA rules. We're going to pretend that we did that. So we're just going to mark it. Check. Single versus double space after a period. This one gets me every time, but I've trying to beat myself of that habit. Check table and figure numbering. We don't have any tables or figures with numbers to include. We do have a table in an appendix, but because it's the only content in the appendix, it doesn't include a table number. When you create an appendix, a table in an appendix, PERRLA gives you some helpful instructions on making sure your table numbering is correct. Last, create a clean version of your paper without content controls. Return it to your professor if you need it. We do need it. So I'm just going to click create a clean copy. This is going to take and it's going to generate a new version of your paper that has all the exact same content from start to finish in the exact same spot, laid out the exact same way, look in the exact same way. It just is going to take out those content controls. So here we can see this is just normal text, Sasquatch the Truth Revealed, whereas in this version, that's a content control. So now I have a version here I can take and I can save this. I'm going to save it to my desktop as Sasquatch the Truth Revealed Final. Save that to my document, and now I know this is the one that I can submit to my professor. Right there it is. Perfect. So now I can take and I can email this in, I can adjust the name or whatever, and I have a version that works with Microsoft Word right here. I can continue to add references and citations to this paper without having to worry about it. And then I have a version that doesn't have any of those content controls in it that I can submit to my professor. Okay, those are our major tips. Let's review them again really quick. 1, your professor is always right. Always listen to your professor. When in doubt, ask. They really want you to do well. But you got to have the time to ask up front. So they're always right. 2, use the PERRLA add-in for Word. If you're having to create a specialized paper like this, using the Word add-in is going to give you all these features and control that we've looked at, where PERRLA Online really keeps you sort of in that straight and narrow of the APA and MLA specific formats. 3, try to create as many of the paper sections as possible before writing. There's always some times where it's like, oh, actually I need something else. That works. You can follow these same steps to generate these reference section or these different sections at any point in the paper, but doing them up front always really helps. 4th, turn on hidden characters. That little backwards P on the home ribbon tab, it will save your life if you're having to do something weird, and it's going to let you really take control over your paper and all the elements inside it. 5th, if you don't have a reference section and you need it, just add a reference to your paper. That's as easy as that. You can then take and remove that reference from your paper, and you'll be left with a nice empty reference section. But when you add your first reference, PERRLA creates your reference section. Number 6, last tip of the day, create a clean copy of your paper before you turn it in. This is a great way to strip out those content controls so your professor won't bump into them. And it's also a great way to have a final clean version of your paper that you can save for posterity as well, in case you're into that kind of thing. Perfect. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we are here to help you if you need help. If you run into trouble doing any of these things, creating a landscape section inside your paper, or taking and adding a different section, or you're not sure how PERRLA is going to interact with this, email us, ask us. We got a team right here in the US that's available 7 days a week until 10 p.m. Central Time. We would love to answer questions. You can email them at support@perrla.com, and they will get back to you really, really quickly. You can also contact them through the PERRLA applications. You can also see our Help Center. We have a help center at PERRLA.com/help, where we've got a lot of articles and videos and other stuff that'll help you through each of the different phases and steps of the writing process and how to use PERRLA along all those lines. So give it a shout. It really is great. And that's it. I hope that this is helping you inside of your big advanced papers as you get to those big papers at the end. If you do have trouble, absolutely, like I've said 100 times, at least 20 now, email us, reach out to us. We would love to help. So thank you so much for watching, and good writing. Bye.